Yo, what's good, party people? Welcome back to the Good Foot Podcast, episode 32, where we get into raw and real for the communal ideal, asking questions about who are we, how do we find more success, health, wealth, financial, spiritual, etc., within the dance journey, dance path in the United States. And to help us do that today is my friend, my sister, Courtney Ross. What's good,
What's
sis?
goody?
What's good? I see you representing the Delta vibes today.
Always.
What's good?
Delta
You know what I
Sigma
mean?
Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Let's go.
Yeah, spring 23. We're coming up on a year. I'm so
Ooh.
excited.
Tell us more about that,
Yeah.
because I know nothing.
It's really necessary for me to stay grounded in sisterhood and fellowship with other Black women who also, work in the community and not necessarily are artists, because I think that is, sometimes a blessing and a curse of being an artist is like we surround ourselves with like-minded people,
yeah.
or people that, work in the same paths. But as I am a person that, just naturally wants to give back to the community and constantly trying to figure out, okay, what can I do with my craft in order to give back? I think it's necessary to stay grounded in real life with people that are not in the arts, so they
Absolutely.
can help me navigate. So it's been great for that, to just have sisterhood, have people there that are just here for Courtney, and it's not, oh my God, Courtney, you're a dancer, you're an artist. And we don't care nothing about that.
Right.
Who are you? I'm always going to be here. If you decide not to dance, we're still going to have this sisterhood. If you decide that, you want to break off and do whatever, create your company or there's always that support and that network that's there.
Yeah.
And, my mom is a Delta. My grandmother was a Delta. So
snap, legacy.
Yeah, I have the opportunity to keep this legacy forward of, just being college educated women. Although we'll have to get to that, because I'm like, you don't necessarily have to be college educated in order to be a force in the community. But I think that is, third generation is like, oh, there's space and opportunity to think differently about, what it means to be a force and a light within the community. But I am still proud to be a part of, this organization that is worldwide. I can go anywhere in the world and find these people that I'm like, I automatically know what you stand for. I automatically know a certain level of experiences that you've had, so we can just come and chop it up.
Yeah. That's dope. Yeah, that's really dope. I feel so inspired and re-inspired by this aspect of holistic community and doing the work to create different pockets that focus on different things and being in community with each of them as it pertains to something that you're inspired by, as a way to remind myself that I'm not, my value or my identity is not necessarily in any one of these things, but my identity is an an amalgamation, a collective of the whole. And so I love that you're creating that for yourself, to be in a space where it's like, I don't have to, I show up as an artist always. And also I can totally put that down or put that more to the side and uplift other aspects of me.
Right.
And I'm valued for me being me, however I want to show up.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's super dope. Did you get pressured from any pressure from grandma and mom to join that thing, or how did you navigate coming to this thing in relation to the legacy?
So growing up, I, of course, I saw my mom and my grandmother have this thing that I couldn't be a part of because I wasn't a Delta. And so there was no pressure, but it kind of just was like, I want that. Maybe that's just, that's the natural evolution of a descendant of Yvonne Stith Chapman, is this is, we eventually become into that. And then I remember going to my older god sisters, who is also a Delta. I went to her initiation. She was at Baton Rouge, and she was at LSU, I think. No, Southern. But we were in Baton Rouge. And we all drove up to the thing. Everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so we're so excited for Marcy.
Yeah.
And then Courtney, because I was like 8, 10 at the time, I had to stay outside and like wait. And so, I just was always like, I want to be a part of whatever this is that y'all are super excited about.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of it. So I like had, Future Delta shirt. It was like, 10.
Totally.
And so I made it to Fordham. Long story short, Fordham does not have Greek life.
Okay.
And so, I had to wait until I was like, okay, so I'm going to do undergrad. And then it's just a matter of like timing and, because you never know, especially in a grad chapter, you never know if they're going to have a line. Because the chapter that I joined in, the last time they had a line was like 2013, maybe.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like, your line, your time too.
Yeah.
And so finally, when I made this line, it just made so much sense in terms of like what was happening in my life, what I was needing, what I was in search of. So there was definitely no pressure.
Yeah.
It was just always something that I wanted to like share with the older women in my family. But then the longer I waited for that, and the more research and the more just watching and seeing how these women show up in the world, and I'm like, all of my favorite documentaries, they always say there's always a Delta in the room or at the table, and so the more I like just try to become and evolve into my higher self, a lot of my like heroes just happen to be Deltas. So I'm like, oh, I have to.
Super cool.
Yeah,
that's dope. I asked because of just I think pretty, I don't know how typical it is. It was very typical in my experience of the pressure between elder generation, younger generation to be something, to do something, to perpetuate the older generation's value system. And so I also have a sense that in the arts, that is also a constant theme that we're often dealing with like, okay, like I want to go do this art thing, but like my parents want to pressure me to do something else that they value. And so I love that your grandmother, your mother, like they were so dedicated to their thing and what they valued, and that brought an excitement for them that it kind of automatically attracted you. I think the leaving it open to you going and just doing something else too, like gives you your own sense of one, freedom to choose, and then also like I feel like it might mean that much more that you're like, no, I want to do this. Like this isn't something that is being put on me. Like this is something that I'm inspired by. I look up to my mom, my grandmother, these other people in the documentaries or whatnot, and be like, I'm gonna go do this thing. And it just, I don't know, it just feels like it makes it that much more sweet that you ended up,
because there was certainly a time between the time I had my experience in undergrad to actually coming over was a 10-year span. So within that time, there was definitely points I'm like, oh, that's not necessary. Like, obviously I can do the work and be in the community without having, this opportunity to be a part of this organization. But at the same time, it's like, that's still something, like I can figure out how to incorporate. And so that's also been a big word in my life right now, is like,
incorporation.
Can I incorporate these things into my life and still feel like I am centered in who I am and the things that I want to do? Some things don't work well and some things work really well. But when I, just when I found that sweet spot of like, oh yeah, I can still be an artist and be a Delta, and then we can come together and maybe create something new. I might be, when I look at, the Nikki Giovanni's or like Ingenue, she's in Origin, she's also a Delta. And so like finding, and these are people that I just like, when I'm on my own intellectual journeys of like who I want to read and their thoughts and how I want to like be more revolutionary or be more, be actively pro-Black, and what does that mean in terms of like what I'm taking in, what I'm reading, what I am, choosing to watch and be inspired by. Like these are my heroes. And they're also, okay, so there is a way for me to incorporate Delta Sigma Theta and Courtney the artist and like, you know, move forward.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. That's dope. I feel this word of incorporation is one that it's a tricky place to navigate, of like, how, for me, like, how much do I delve into one thing? How much do I silo and focus and hone on this specific culture, this specific craft? And then, like, how much, because of that focus, other things start to get a little more blurry. But then it's like, but I want also that thing. And again, this whole sense of like holistic self. And it's like, how much resources do I give to being that holistic self versus like really going into that one focused thing. And I think especially within dance for me, because that, in regards to the craft, it's like, there's so much to excavate, improve in within dancing. And then that constantly feels, at least financially for me, that I'm never, I remember often feeling, I'm not good enough yet. I'm not good enough yet in order to get myself to a financial threshold to be okay to start touching upon the other aspects of me. And so I'm just going to keep digging into this thing until I'm good enough. And as a result, I started to, like, I think, be unbalanced in my holistic self. And so I'm wondering, for you, what's been your journey to, in that navigation, in that balancing act of honing in on your artistry, on your dancing, and giving ample resources to you as a holistic human being as well?
I feel like it's been recently that I have allowed myself to care about, pour into things that don't necessarily have to do with dance. And so my mother and my grandmother have been such huge influences on anything that I have done. So I was like put into dance when I was 3. And then, you know, I just kept going. Like that was like, that's my focus. It was like Courtney and dance. Like that's just my identity. Nothing else mattered. But I remember saying, I was like at a football game. I remember this so clearly. We were at my brother's football game, stadium lights, similar to this. Was like, they're always asking, like, well, Courtney, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I want to be a dancing doctor. And people were like, well, what does that mean? Like, you know, at the time, you know, doctors were the only people that we go to and say, okay, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to go to the doctor. And so, you know, as I get older and I'm starting to see, like, you know, I started a nonprofit that's dance centered, but dance centered in a way where it's like, I want to use dance to like help people feel good or feel better, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, it's always like, you have to dance because, you know, I've done this for so long. I have to like make a career out of it. I have to learn how to like pay my bills. So I can't necessarily stop and like go to med school or, you know, whatever. So it's only been, I think the pandemic was a blessing for me in that way, because I had to, at least, I didn't have to, but it gave me the opportunity to say, okay, if dance never opens back up, if you never hit another stage, you're not dying. So you have to figure out like, what else are you passionate about? What other things can you lift up? Can you pour into to live? You know, so, and that's when I started pouring into Bloom a little more. That's when I, you know, started contemplating, okay, do I want to go back to school? Because there is still this side of me, the doctor, as I get older, I'm like, okay, the doctor, I don't think it's like a PhD we never know. We never know if we have a PhD coming in my world.
Man, come on.
But like, I remember saying, I want to be like an OBGYN, or like, oh, that's a lie. I don't know if like, but I love babies and I love I love kids. And so, yeah, the pandemic definitely gave me that opportunity to just like reflect on we got the dance part under control.
Right.
We got that. We've got a career. We know how to like tap in and like get to the audition. We know how to find the gigs, obviously, because that's what we've done for forever. So what about this doctor part? What is that? And I think that's where I am in my life right now.
Cool.
Of like, we've got the dance under control. We've had the career, or have the career. It can go, but there's this doctor part there.
Yeah.
There's this side of me that constantly is trying to figure out, how do I, through my craft, how do I help people period. How can I give back? How can I empower people with the tools to ground, calm? Pandemic, there was this clip. So we all know racial tensions were really high, and I'm like really, really passionate about Black people, and like just wanting to change the narrative emotionally for Black people. And so there was something that came up. There's this clip between 3 different generations of Black men, and it was like, 60-year-old, 30-year-old, 15-year-old. And the 15-year-old is pissed. He's like, all of them are so angry, but rightfully so. And the 60-year-old and the 30-year-old were like, yo, we got to find a different way to go about this, because I'm 60 and I'm just as pissed as you are at 15. So we got to figure out something else to do. Like we just have to figure out how to change the narrative, because it's not fair. This is a fight that's necessary, but man, you're 15 and I'm 60 and we pissed about the same shit. So I think like that ingrained in me is like, I think that's the help that I'm trying to figure out. Like, how can we change the narrative for Black people, Black men, but just in general for Black people, or people that have been historically oppressed, to, find ease and also find ways to be, is liberatory a word? How do we find our liberation? How do we find our liberation?
Like,
how do we find
put it in the dictionary.
How do we find our liberation in a real way, so that when we know these things are happening, because if he's 60, he's 30, he's 15, and we're all upset about the same things, we can only expect that in another 15, 20 years, we're going to be mad about the same shit.
Right.
So the only thing that we can do differently is learn to change the space and time, or the practices, or the values. Like, all we can do is change ourselves. So if we can find a place, and that, again, that's the help that I'm like trying to figure out through my craft. It's like, what can I do for the nervous systems, for the emotional wellness, for the healing, for the rest, for the liberation of historically oppressed people, so that, in 15 years, this 30-year-old is like, you know what, y'all, they doing this thing, but we gonna come and we gonna sit in this room and we gonna talk, and we're gonna, instead of
absolutely.
Like,
and it feels like that's doctorhood in another way, with this, I think, as you said earlier, like this intention of healing, and like, people aren't feeling well, like, where do I go? The doctor. And like, okay, yeah, that can be from a more medical health institution, kind of how we typically think of doctor. And it feels like there is a spiritual, cultural, emotional, psychological place that you're being called to, and being a doctor within those realms too. I think there is just as an importance of the doctor of the physical as the doctor of the seen, tangible aspect of us, as much as the unseen spirit of us. And so there's just a lot of things that you ended up going through. I want to kind of break some of that stuff down. Well, for one, like we just went in, y'all. Like this is my, as I said, it's my sister here. And so I've just been like, yo, we've been talking about it before. Like, yo, we just need to talk. We just need to chop it up. And so, yeah, we just went right in from Delta to all the things of spiritual doctorship. And so let's go back and break some of these things down. One thing that I've really enjoyed hearing from you is this thing of like, I've done it for so long. In regards to the dance practice, and where like for me, I have not done it as long. I've done it, for a decade now, a little more than that. And so for a long time, but you said 3 years old. That's a very, very different thing. And so where it's like this kind of internal pressure I'm interpreting of, yo, I put so much into this thing, I have to make a career out of it. And the box that we place ourselves in as a result of that was very intriguing to me. And I'm wondering if you can say more about that, if there's something that's coming up to you. But something that was also very liberating for me to hear is how you've been growing into that and into breaking down, deconstructing, and obliterating that box for yourself. That, yeah, like I've done the thing and I've had certain goals within the thing. I know you have certain goals within the thing still. And it felt, for me, I'm putting words in your mouth, but and so let me know if I'm wrong, but it felt like, okay, I have hit enough of those goals to be like, I can stop putting so many resources or stop putting so much of my identity into that thing. And I can see where this doctorship takes me, because there's other goals and dreams that are pulling my heart towards that as well.
It is more on the, can I, again, this word of like incorporation, because again, 3 years old, I'm how old now? We can say
I was like, hey.
Like my entire life, and I think I'm just at a point now where I can trust that dance will always be here. Like I don't have, there's no longer this need to like, I'm a dancer and that's the only thing I have to focus on. Like, yes, you are a dancer. That's who you are. That's who you were before you got put into dance class. That's why they made you go to dance class, because you were always dancing. And so I think it is a little bit of me reconstructing what it means to be a dancer. And like, can I be a dancer and not think that the only option I have is to dance?
Right.
Because if I dance and I'm, at the club dancing every week, but I've never been in a codified class, I'm still a dancer.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's where I am. It's like maybe a deconstruction and a incorporation of like, I can be a dancer and go be a doctor and whatever. And even if, that spiritual realm, but I can pour into this doctor, nurturer, helper, seeker of joy for the people, and still dance. And I maybe these years of pouring into dance solely is to have this big wealth of knowledge about what it feels like to dance and be in your body and learn how to like tell stories through your body, so that I can pour that into, okay, how can I help people to be in their bodies and like, shake out this trauma that like we get to do that all the time. And like, that's one of the things that I've learned from reading. It's like the number one thing that mammals do, which we're mammals.
Yeah.
They shake. Like if you look at a dog or you look at animals that fight and they get to this thing and they boom or whatever, and then they like boom. And humans are the only group of people that like we fight and they were like
keep holding on.
You keep holding on to it. So good. we're blessed to like I'm gonna move my body and I'm gonna let that go just by the sake of going and leaning into my craft.
Nice.
So but like really taking what are the things that make me an artist, and like maybe my brain has enough space and capacity to think creatively because I'm not holding on to so much because my craft is to move. I think that's it's beautiful. Like your openness and choice to open yourself up to these other possibilities has also opened pathways for you to reflect on how your strengths flow in multiple capacities. And so I think I'm especially thinking of I'm thinking about the what I would consider a lie that I was told or I interpreted back in academia when I really first started dancing, of like we are a field and we have to validate that we are a field and we're worthy of holding space in this country, and we're going to do that. That's all true. But for me, the lie came in like we have to do that by siloing ourselves and in order to establish ourselves as this legitimate thing. And a lot of work, artistic work through dance, I feel becomes stale to me because where my observation is that a lot of us are not opening ourselves up to those other aspects of ourselves so that we can see and listen to the ways in which our craft, our sense of embodiment, et cetera, can exist in these other ways. And I also think that us doing that, you doing that, provides an opportunity for people who are not so familiar with dance to see how dance really can impact their lives for the better, in a way that just going to a show is beautiful and does a lot. But that's not the only way that we can validate the impact of dance. And so going into these spaces and reminding people that we are mammals and that we can shake because that's what animals do and what impact that has, that is the beautiful integration of your dance work with your doctor and healing work. But also like dance was such a part of and is such a part of who we are as Black people, African or diasporic people. That's who we are. And so at some point in time in this America, in this system, we became more and more disconnected from dance. So it's important to always say, like, when I'm meeting people and I'm going into these communities where I'm teaching a class, and I love teaching people that, like, girl, I don't dance. I'm like, girl, you was at the birthday party at the wedding. I just saw you. So it's like, yes, going, like you say, like going to see dance is a thing, but I have to remind people that, like, you are a dancer. Just because I have had an education and I've had the privilege in order to go to class and like pay for class and have a degree of dance, like that all happened and manifested because I was dancing. Just the same way that you have been dancing for 30 years and I'm dancing for 30 years and I'm trying to be more like you, because when I'm at the club, I'm like, what do I do? I've been in ballet class, or I don't know, what to do anymore. And you just having a good time. And so I'm like, well, how,
there's a freedom
reminding
there.
people you in fact are a dancer.
For sure. for sure,
forgot about that part of yourself or whatever.
Yeah, that's good. So you casually dropped a nonprofit situation on us and kept it moving. So I'm curious about what we've been talking about with the doctorship and the artistry. And I know you also mentioned that you have a love for kids and children. And so can you tell us about Bloom and the origins of that? And then how one thing that I'm very curious about is this translation process of the ethereal reality, the soul, spiritual reality into this shared reality of time and space. And so coming from the origin, the conceptualization of this Bloom idea into, okay, now we're in a nonprofit and putting that into fruition. Can you talk to us about that translation process?
Yes. Where does it start? It's been in me for forever. So in college, had you asked me in college, did I think I would have a 10+ year career in dance postgraduate? I'm like, no, I didn't, just wherever I was at the time, I did not see this for myself.
Wow.
It's like I wanted to go home and have a dance in education program.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's always been there.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's such a convoluted question because it's like always been here. It's always been here. So that like I knew I wanted to have a dance program.
Yep.
And then point two, the program I think began to be in my mind. The program was a program where I wanted to help young people who maybe didn't have access or whatever. I have a little sister, not blood, but she's like a cousin who we had, what are the words? Like she stayed with us. Like we were her legal guardianship family for 2 years.
Cool.
And so, she's my little sister. You living in the house, we're going to school. This is my sister.
Yeah.
And she comes from just a very low income, oppressed community, whatever. Yeah. So we took her in and she loved to dance. But, low income, such a long story. But I'm like, man, how can I help her? Like if I could go back and have a program that my sister could have gone to, I think these things could have helped her. So that's like, okay, when I have a program and Kiara goes to it, what does Kiara need? What do I think Kiara needs in order to have, I don't want to say better or worse experience, but have a different experience to where she could be more joyful, to where she could understand people around her more so that she could understand herself and how to navigate the people around her more. What does she need? It's like, okay, so, she has experienced a lot of heavy things. Why is she experiencing a lot of heavy things? Oh, because, we're lacking empathy. We're lacking a lot. But in terms of like, what can I give a human in order to have a better experience or have more control? I'm going to cut that down and say, we need to have more emotional awareness, period. I think that would help. So then Bloom came, and that's me going to church. And I'm like, okay, I have this program that I want. It's in my mind. It's for young girls. Because when Kiara was with us at the time, she was 8.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's got to be young. It's got to like 8 to 12, because that's the age they're very malleable. They're still very, very open. They're trying to find their identity, find out who they are, but they're very loving, very free, very, very free people. 8 to 12-year-olds. They're very open.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, 8 to 12. I want to give them emotional awareness and self-awareness confidence, empowerment. And then I go to church and says something about a seed being planted and it blooms. And I was like, bloom. I just like the way that sounds, like, because it's something that's going into dirt. You're putting it in the dirt and then you have to water it. But if you keep watering it, it blooms and it grows. And then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, okay, bloom.
It's beautiful.
And then I was like, okay, well, it can't just, like, when you see bloom, it's not just about flowers. So I was like, oh, beautiful littles overcoming obstacles of the mind, because it's these things that we think, like,
come on, you just dropped that. Like, I was like, wait. Oh, that's an acronym. Like, you gotta put that down for us again.
Bloom is an acronym. Bloom stands for Beautiful Littles Overcoming Obstacles of the Mind.
Nice.
Because it's all in our mind. It's all things that we think are, I'm not enough. I am afraid. I'm lacking. I'm not good enough. I don't know. Like, that's all in your mind. It's not real. You just don't. You don't have the toolkit to know that it's not real yet. So I have to, and this is also at a time where I'm like experiencing depression, and which is another big thing of like how we get to, it's got to be something to do with this, because I'm like, I'm depressed. I'm like, well, I dance, but so the more I filled up my toolkit, it was like, okay, if I can fill this toolkit and then give it to 8 to 12-year-olds, maybe by the time they're 22, 23, they might, I'm not going to say you're not going to experience a depression or anxiety, because that's part of the human experience, but it may not have to feel so devastating, because you are aware and you know that this is a thing. You are empowered and equipped to say, okay, my chest is heavy, I'm crying a lot, my head hurts, I'm clenching my jaw. Okay, that's how sadness or anger shows up. Okay, I might just be depressed. Let me go dance. Let me go do some yoga. Let me meditate. Like, it might not have to be so debilitating if I can give you this tool.
And what are those tools and like the research to find them done for your healing and your liberation?
What is the research that I've done for myself in order for my healing and liberation?
So what I heard was that you're providing these tools for young women, girls 8 to 12, in order to provide them mindful, spiritual skills, so that they can find more enlightenment and liberation more quickly, more efficiently. And so my experience is, as I'm seeking to graft a toolkit, a curriculum, that I'm having to go through research and in order to make that happen. And so I'm curious about like what that research was for you, what as you grab those tools to offer it to somebody else, how those same tools have worked for your own healing.
So Bloom, as far as its curriculum and what I give back, what I choose to teach, is all gut led, like instinctual kind of thing. And I think it's like, this helped me heal when I started a yoga practice and learning and experiencing what happens to my body when I decide to intentionally breathe in, breathe out. Like, what does that do for me? Is that calming? Yes. Okay. So then somebody that's 8, that's like, they'll appreciate that. So like, okay. But I guess my research has been like, I got certified in yoga so that I can understand what it does for myself. I also teach it. I started taking developmental psychology classes so that I can understand what capacity an 8 to 12-year-old has. And it's like, they like to play. So it's like, how can we incorporate, teaching self-awareness through games, through dance? So we play a lot of games. Nice. We tactile touch is also something that's good, for healing or whatever. So like we do arts and crafts, so we're hand painting and like pressing things down. So it's just like, I I don't yet believe, and maybe there's more research, but I don't think there's a difference in what a 30-year-old needs to heal and what an 8-year-old needs to learn to calm down. Because really all it is like the more we undo our trauma and, you know, we heal, those are the things that are going to keep you level.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like my research is kind of like my life. Like, you know, these are the things when I'm going to therapy and, you know, she's saying, giving me these certain activities. It's like, okay, an 8-year-old, we need to learn how to read and write. So that's a whole nother thing, because so often in our communities, it's like we are lacking in education. And so that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I'm like, if we can learn to read and write, we can journal. And even if you don't, so it's like watching Precious the other day. And like, why was I watching Precious? I don't know.
I don't even know what that is. Was it a show?
What? You don't know Precious?
No,
okay, yeah, we'll get to it. But it's this movie about this girl just dealt the worst of the worst.
Okay.
And so her teacher, like, she can't read, she can't write, blah, blah, blah. She's really good at math. Her teacher was like, just write anything. She's like, I don't know how to write, but it's like, yes, you do. Like, you can you know how to put the pen to paper, and so just try. So anyway, if my therapist is saying write to figure out what's in your brain, I'm gonna bring this back. Okay, let's write about a time where you felt good. You know, the language might be a little bit, you know, watered down because it's an 8-year-old, and like, you don't know what it means to be your most manifested joyful person, but you know when you had a good time. You know when you laughed. Tell me about a good time when you laughed. You know, tell me about a time when you were sad. If you can think back, you have memory. You're old enough to really think. And I remember last week. Okay, so, you know, last week, was there a time when you were sad? What did you do? What did you feel? So I don't know if I'm talking in circles at all, but I think to bring it back, like, my research in order to give to them has been research in order to learn how to heal myself.
Right. Yeah.
And then, when I find practices that are tangible for me, that's when I incorporate it into my programming with them.
Nice. That's dope. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. And this whole thing has been like, oh snap! Like, we had questions. We had certain things that we were supposed to get into, and I don't know if I like touched any of those things, but I feel like this has been exactly what was needed. So thank you for showing up and being open to that. I want to get into just our concluding segments here, getting back on track at the end. No, this is I love being off track. That is not a negative thing at all. And so the first one is just remix a time where we switch the paradigm and the interviewer becomes the interviewee type of vibe. So if you have any questions for me, this is the time. This is the moment.
It's my time to shine.
You've been shining, girl. You've been blooming.
If I had to ask my brother Keelan one thing, it would be, I guess we'll find it if I start talking. One thing that I admire about you the most is that you have found a way to, in my experience and how I experience you, is you have found a way to create your platforms, you've found a way to earn a living outside of people's systems. And so I guess my question is, what has that journey been for you? What is it to liberate yourself from being anyone's employee at any time, any place? Like, you are very much, in my experience, again, very much in control of your life and your foundation. And I'm like, what's the key? You know, how do I unlock that? You know, we trying, and like, I have my nonprofit and I have, you know, my career, and thank God, like, one of the questions we were going to get into, I was like, oh, a financial win is like being able to create something for myself. I can pay myself in the midst. But yeah, I'm just interested in like what that journey has been for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for asking that. And I mean, a couple of things that I heard that I just want to like preface the answer with is like, I do not have it under control. For me, everything in regards to control is all God. Like, and that foundation, like God, the Holy Trinity, Jesus is my foundation. And so they have promised me that my needs will be taken care of as I pursue them, as I understand them, as I open myself to be a vessel and a shield and a sword for them. And so a lot of the balance or the seeking peace, I would say, is remembering that, and centralizing that chase towards God first, and centering it first, and then listening and opening myself up to what their voice is telling me to do. And then going after that unapologetically and confidently, knowing that I have the ultimate creator behind my back, leading me in front, guiding me from head to toe. And so I want to preface it with that, but I feel like I'm not outside of systems. I feel like I'm beyond systems, meaning that I feel like I need the systems because one, I can't do this alone. And so one thing the systems provide are people, and those people provide community. And so I have to be in the systems, even if I really disagree with the ethos of the system. One, so that I can show my God in those places that I do not agree with. And two, so I can pour the seeds for whatever is our collaboration in the future, to foster. And so yeah, I think kind of going back to our beginning, what I have personally valued is the holistic side of stuff, that I'm going to have my toe here and my other heel here and my top of head there and my elbow there, all with the consciousness of like, am I overstretching? So like they're constantly being this balance and negotiation of what do I need right now, prioritizing that, and based off of that priority, putting myself in a specific position to appease those needs. And so like right now, for example, it's like, okay, we're here on tour dancing, and then there's a battle coming up that next week that I'm like, all right, like let's keep getting into that, because that's just a constant value that pulls my heart, where it's like, I believe battling requires me, similar to dancing in the specific context of Camille A. Brown and dancers, it requires me to have a certain courage. It is a, what I say is like a purifying fire environment, where like there's no place to hide. I gotta fully show up. And so it tests that aspect of me. And so I'm like, I need to do that. I need to listen to these visions of creating healthy and wealthy situations for myself and offering that to other people, so that we can be artists, dance artists in this country, and feel like we are liberated enough, that we have the skills enough, so that we can not have to capitulate to any stipulations or conform to any laws or authority that we do not disagree with. And so that's always kind of been my thing since maybe college and a little bit before that. And I have to give my parents the praise on that one, because they gave me a sense of, you got to get a scholarship going into college, right? And me getting a scholarship at Penn State allowed me to get from under their authority, where they had certain things that they wanted me to do. And because I was not financially tied to them, I could listen to what God was telling me to do and deal with my own crap while listening to them, but not necessarily having to appease them. And that freedom, that power of choice was something that I'm like, I never want to let that go. At the end of the day, it's always going to be, what do I want to do? And can I rise to the skills and the mentality that I'm being called to do? So let me not ever need anything where I start to lose that integrity or lose that sense of listening or alignment in order to listen. So yeah, I think it's very similar to what we were talking about earlier, that it's like, what are the systems that exist and how do they appease the voice that is calling me to do what I need to do, all with the consciousness of how do I not overstretch and what are my resources.
Okay.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm just like, I think it does. I think what I am taking, one of the things that I took away from that is like, you need the systems, if only for community. Because me and the rebel side of me is like, I don't want to work for anybody. Like I love working in this Camille A. Brown space, because like I don't feel like we have a pause. Like we have people that we learn from, and that we want to grow to be an artist that can like match that level of mastery and that level of just freedom on stage, and that confidence, that courage. That's the word I was searching for. That courage. Like, how can I just be courageous and free in everything that comes through my body in order to tell these stories? So I love working in this space, but in terms of like finding that financial security and that level playing field, I get weary of seeing myself in spaces that are like systems, because I'm like, I like to move how I want to move. And, so I'm like, oh, I don't want to work there because it feels like everyone is micromanaged, or, everyone here, like y'all are great artists, but, sometimes it feels like you're an employee and you don't have your autonomy. And so, what'd you say? Like, you're in front of the system or ahead of the system, but
beyond the system. Yeah. In it and beyond it. Yeah.
The system is a necessary part in order to get beyond that, because now you have community and you have resources and you have people that can, back you up when you're, okay, I'm deciding to move forward and I'm going to do such and such thing because you've gone through it or whatever. You have this network and you have this orbit that can support you in order to move beyond it.
Right. Absolutely. And there's the learning lessons that come from it.
Yeah.
It's like when I create my own, I want to be tapped into the knowledge of what already is, so that I can be very distinct on how I am and specific on how I'm doing it differently, not just wanting to have a different result, but what are the processes that got to the result I don't want to get to? So now I have to construct it differently, but I need I need the pathway that I don't want as inspiration to create the path that I do. And so, yeah, that's another reason. But at the same time, it's also this sense of like, okay, I'm in these systems, but the part of being the beyond system is like, part of being beyond the systems are the creating of my own, that like I have to find, but that the courage that I'm finding in the systems, like being a part of a company and showing myself up there, being a part of battles in that community, showing up there helps me to find the courage to create my own system, right? So it's once again that like they feed off of one another. But I cannot do one without the other. And that for some reason in my life that's been what I've needed to stay balanced until God provides an opportunity for the system to just become its own thing that runs and becomes an ecosystem that I can live off of and whatnot. I feel like I've been impatient with creating that, and I've been humbled in regards to that. And I'm like, it just needs to organically grow. But me being in these other systems cannot take so many resources that I can't continue pouring into my system. So yeah, that's the balance for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance. I find that like in my life, I am put in this space, this whole bi-coastal living, because like, okay, so sometimes I live in New Orleans, sometimes I live in New York, but what I am finding is, and so when I'm in New Orleans, that's where all of my community work is, and I'm like, I'm pouring into, I'm holding dance classes, I'm holding workshops, et cetera, but I'm finding that again, like I can't do one without the other, because when I'm in New York, I'm learning again, like what feeds me, how am I showing up in the space to be this liberated person, what am I finding, so that when I go home, I'm like, okay, this is what works, this is like I've gone and I've had my journey, now I can like set it up so you can have that too. So it's really interesting that like I can't have one without the other, and though sometimes it feels like I'm stretching or a little, like how can I put myself in a position to not overstretch, but I can't have one without the other. And also, I'm interested to see what my journey will be moving forward from today. Is like, how can I trust that if I decide to go in this system or take this job or whatever the case may be, there, even if the lesson is this is how you don't want to do it, that lesson is just as valuable.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yes, dope. Yeah. The next section is fast footwork. So these are quick one pot answers. And so the first one is, what book is most impacting you today?
Well, I brought the book, so I didn't have to think about it. It's called Parable of the Talents by Octavia E. Butler. And it's a series. And so the series, it's like a post-apocalyptic sci-fi world where the protagonist, Laura, she is a feeler. So she has this condition where she feels other people's pain as her own pain. And so the first one is called Parable of the Sower. And so the world is burning around her and everyone's being killed. And so you can imagine her as a feeler, like how much pain she feels. And so that one is just about her finding, going on this journey, bringing people along so that she can find a place to like be at peace. And so then we get to Parable of the Talents, and it's just so far the story of her creating community now that she's gone through the trenches and like found this green land that she can build anything from. Now what are you building? So yeah.
What are we building? Yourself 10 years ago, in one sentence. What did yourself have to hear?
What did I have to hear? To do what?
One sentence.
Like, what was I seeking to hear? What did I need to hear? What?
If you could talk to yourself 10 years ago.
Thank you.
What would you say?
If I could talk to myself 10 years ago, I would say, girl, just trust the journey and don't ever give up part of yourself. Don't ever, keep your whole self and keep validating your whole self, even in times where you feel like your whole self is not valuable or you can't show up. That's more important than anything is validating your whole self.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
You better put the commas in the sentence.
Like it's so sentence.
Who would you want to hear from on the Good Foot podcast?
Who would I want to hear from on the Good Foot podcast? Ooh, I would love to see a conversation between you and Moramina Parker.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's a person that we will just get so many gems from dance, from an academic and like intellectual standpoint. That's the first person that comes to mind.
Yeah. I was just about to say, sure.
She has a time. She's being her PhD child. But yeah.
And lastly, how can we support you?
Donate to Bloom Dance Inc. You can find us on Instagram. I'm taking a social media fast, but if you go to at Bloom Dance Inc., you'll find donation links there. And just keep praying for me. Keep, showing me love, good vibes. Do that. Yep. Cool. And if you have 8 to 10-year-olds or 8 to 12-year-olds, you're in New York and you want me to come out and have some workshops, I would love that too. I'm trying to expand to New York so we're putting that out in the universe today. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Because energy and healing, that's, it's worldwide and we exist worldwide. So
thanks for coming on and helping us heal.
Yeah. Thank you, Brody.
Y'all, that's all we got today. I hope you brought a huge bag to hold all these gems here.
Namaste.
Thank you so much for coming and joining with us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace, love,
Namaste.
life.
Love you.